It's a brand new year and a brand new byword. As we head into the new year, what are our Nerd Year resolutions? The byword starts now. Ladies and gentle nerds, welcome to a new episode of the Nerd Byword Podcast, episode 135. I'm Dave. I'm here with my buddy Kris, and we are just tickled pink to celebrate a brand new year with another episode of the Nerd Byword Podcast. In this week's Big Talk, we are going to bandy about some of our Nerd Year resolutions. What do we hope to achieve and accomplish in the nerd world in the upcoming year? But before that, it is time, as always, for... Kris, you're going to have to explain this news story to me because, what?
Well, Donald Glover is finally getting his Spider-Man movie. Kind of. So Glover is going to star and produce in yet another Sony Pictures Spider-Man-centric, but not Spider-Man included, film. According to The Hollywood Reporter, he is going to be centered around the Hypno Hustler. A D-list, E-list villain, co-created by Bill Mantlo and Frank Springer, who showed up first in Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, number 24 in 1978. Real name, Antoine Delsoin, leader of a band called the Mercy Killers, and uses hypnosis technology in his instruments on the audience in order to rob them. Glover has been long tied to the Spider-Man franchise since way back in 2012, where a lot of fans were clamoring for him to get the titular role in the 2012 reboot, which ultimately went to Andrew Garfield. He did voice Spider-Man Miles Morales in the Disney XD series Ultimate Spider-Man in 2015, and he was also very, very briefly in Spider-Man Homecoming, where it was heavily hinted that he was Uncle Aaron, Miles Morales' uncle. So while we can, roll our eyes at another Spider-Man antagonist getting a feature film with no Spider-Man, at this point, I'm kind of here for this one, especially with the people attached to it. Donald Glover, I think, is a really talented creator, and I think he could have a lot of fun with this. Eddie Murphy's son, Miles Murphy, is set to write this thing. So I know that we're kind of about, the Venoms and the Morbiuses, but this one I'm oddly kind of excited for.
I think it also really depends on what they're going to do with this. We're talking about a very, sort of obscure character. I've read a fair deal of Spider-Man comics, and Hypno Hustler raised an eyebrow over here. So, I think there's room for reinterpretation and reinvention here that could lend itself to an interesting movie. So I'm going to take a wait and see approach. Just as long as I don't have to sit through another Venom movie, I think I'll be fine.
All right, Dave. Sad news on your end.
Yeah, well, it is the shot heard around the world, so to speak, for nerds. We've had a sort of a cameo in the recent Black Adam movie of Henry Cavill's version of Superman. News stories were being released that he's coming back into the fold, that they're developing a Man of Steel sequel. And he exited The Witcher, obviously, around the same time. So much ado. And now, since James Gunn has been hired to co-head DC Films, they have decided to go in a different direction, and it is official now that Henry Cavill is in fact not returning to the role as Superman. He has released an official statement on Instagram saying in part, After being told by the studio to announce my return back in October prior to their hire, the hire of James Gunn and Peter Safran. This news isn't the easiest, but that's life. The changing of the guard is something that happens. I respect that. James and Peter have a universe to build. I wish them and all involved with the new universe the best of luck and the happiest of fortunes. We talked about this some already last week with the reports that there will not be a Patty Jenkins helmed Wonder Woman 3 as it appears right now. And so there's definitely sort of a wiping of the slate occurring. I think that is becoming increasingly clear. There are still some movies coming from DC that were sort of shot and edited and everything before this changing of the guard. And, it remains to be seen what will happen with those movies long term, if they're still going to be, a jumping off point for sequels, or if they're sort of the last hurrah of the old DC extended universe as it was. We still got The Flash. We still got the new Shazam. We still got another Aquaman movie. So it's on the one hand, disheartening, because I think most everybody, whether they were fans of the Snyder helmed movies or not, most everyone pretty much agreed that Henry Cavill was just perfectly suited for the Superman role. And so seeing him come around again would have been extremely satisfying. On the other hand, it is true that, the changing of the guard happens, and this is a time to maybe be excited for what this next iteration of Superman could be. So bittersweet to say the least. I do think that it is probably fair to say that a lot of this kerfuffle situation probably falls at the feet of Rock to Dwayne Johnson. I think the Rock, as big of a fan as I am of his, has had sort of an urge to fight Superman on the big screen for a long time, going back many, many years. And so I seem to recall several years ago he was even bandied about as a possible actor for the role of Green Lantern John Stewart, and he started posting on social media about how John Stewart could whoop Superman. Like he's been itching for this fight for a long time, I think, and so him throwing all his weight behind Henry Cavill returning as Superman because he wanted to have this Black Adam Superman fight, and then Black Adam sort of, releasing to middling reviews and sort of a middling box office, kind of put the final nail in the coffin of having another Cavill at Superman movie in some respects. So it's just trying to be positive here and looking forward to what the new people in charge will build as far as these characters go. We make much out of the fact that I'm a DC guy and you're a Marvel guy, and I really just want some good DC movies again. I want the Superman movie above all else to just succeed, and so whether that is with Cavill or not, first and foremost, I'm a fan of the character. So here's hoping that they get it right this time.
Yeah, I think for me is more as I kind of sit back and take a deep breath. If this is collateral damage to start over and get something fresh and build from the ground up as we did in our most recent episode, I think that's a necessary evil at this point. And while I'm sad to see Henry Cavill leave the role, not only Superman but now Geralt of Rivia as well, I don't know anything about Warhammer, this new project he's got, but I'll support him in it. I am excited for the future. And I think it's probably for the best. If I understand it correctly, they're going with a young-ish Superman story. And so that did not make Henry Cavill a fit for the role. So I'm excited for where the future goes, and I think it's at this point it's necessary to wipe the slate clean and start over. It's going to be interesting to see how we can do that with, as you mentioned, these other films still to go. Maybe The Flash is this reset thing with there's a lot of folks that are speculating like a Flashpoint type of scenario, but only time will tell.
Yeah, it's. I feel like James Gunn obviously listens to our show, so I think if he really wants to make a sort of a younger, less experienced sort of Superman movie, then might I suggest one of the few good things to come out of the New 52, Grant Morrison's run on Action Comics. There's something very striking about Superman in a pair of blue jeans and a Superman t-shirt, dangling corporate villains out of a window.
I don't know, dude. I think Grant Morrison has had enough say with DC film and TV.
Grant Morrison could never have enough say. Grant Morrison must have all say. Grant Morrison is like Darkseid. Grant Morrison is. No, it's a great run, and in a lot of ways harkens back to the original.
I'm sorry.
Siegel and Schuster comic books.
Whoa! I just blanked, and that was one of the most disgusting things I've ever said on this show. I blanked and switched them out with Jeff Johns. My bad.
Yes. So please, Grant Morrison. New 52 Action Comics run harkens back really to the original Siegel and Schuster comics. You could in terms that won't make a lot of people happy, you could almost describe Superman sort of as a social justice warrior. There are so many cool moments where he just goes after the powerful that prey on the weak, and it's a very, very powerful tale of early Superman, and I think there's a lot to like there, and maybe some of that influence would be really good to provide a very different sort of take on a big screen Superman. Anyways, moving on, now that I'm back to wishing about various comic book influences on the new Superman movie, let's go ahead and move on to our Byword Big Talk. We're going to be talking Nerd Year resolutions, so stick around. And we're back. Quite literally, because it's a brand new year, and Kris and I are now charting the course for what we hope to do over the next nerdy year. And there's a lot to talk about, both in terms of the byword and some personal things that are connected to the nerd world that we hope to accomplish. So in this week's we're going to talk Nerd Year resolutions, and I'm going to go ahead and throw it right over to Kris. What is your first big Nerd Year resolution?
Well, this feels very much like our 100th episode, where we were kind of taking a look back and a look towards the future, but I am allergic to remaining stagnant and mediocrity. I'm always looking to grow this show, and whether that's taking a more active role on social media, running more advertisements, creating different types of episodes, switching it up.
Hosting on Mastodon.
No, I can't get in. So y'all keep tooting on over there. Still can't get in. But yeah, so I'm looking to grow the show and just create a wider audience and get our names out there and just be bigger and better and badder in every sense of the term.
And that is, obviously always something that is in the back of our heads. So the beginning of a new year is a natural place to take stock a little bit of where we are as a show. And I'm very, very pleased with much that we have done as a podcast. I really like your Nerd at Night stuff that you've been doing over on Instagram to talk to like indie comic creators. That's such a cool companion piece to what we're doing here with the main show. I know we've redone our website recently. I thought that was a really good step in the right direction. And as far as like more social media, it's always kind of difficult to engage on social media and draw not eyeballs, draw ears to the show, I guess, considering how much of social media is in an upheaval right now. I mean, Facebook has basically become the place for old people. The kids in our lives keep reminding us of that quite frequently. The metaverse is imploding quite literally with the company just losing billions of dollars. Twitter is just in the hands of Lex Luthor, it seems like.
Oh, that's an insult to Lex Luthor. That would assume that he's capable and intelligent.
Yeah. And then Hive, of course, is very small potatoes right now, growing faster than it can quite handle yet. And so, they just had like a 2-week downtime as of this recording, just trying to get like their servers in order. And as Kris likes to point out at every opportunity he can't get into Mastodon. So social media is kind of a kerfuffle right now. So finding the perfect place to engage with our audience, even finding where our audience is hanging their hat right now, is a difficult proposition. But saying that we want to grow the show is never an indicator that we don't appreciate the fans that we do have. Our audience is small but vocal, and we love engaging with all of you, both through the show and through social media. And we just want to spread the word about this little show that I think we have built sort of a positive environment on to sort of look at the nerd world from a very positive standpoint, I guess. And if that's what we're building here, and it takes a little longer to grow the show than if we were going straight negative and, like, I don't know, putting googly eyes on Carol Danvers or something, then so be it. I'd rather have slow growth and stay true to our values than try to make like shock images and headlines and stuff just to get hate listeners. I'm not interested in that particular growth.
Yep, same here. I think that'll come with time, and I'm not going to do something that's disingenuous. I think the moral fibers that have been instilled in me via comic books and superheroes in general and nerd media wouldn't allow me to do that.
Yeah, Superman would not approve, Kris.
He's watching.
And neither would Peter Parker.
Dave, you kind of tap danced around this one, but leaned full into it. Your first nerd year resolution.
Yeah, I want to play a little bit more around with our Nerd Byword website. This, when we first started out, we basically used a Podbean template. Podbean, of course, our podcast host. And since, over the last year, we've kind of built our own website through Bluehost from the ground up. And I'm very, very pleased, I think, with the results of that so far. The big thing, of course, is that right now it's predominantly a podcast delivery system, and there isn't a whole lot else. And I do think that there is room for more, maybe slapping on some written content, some behind the scenes extra information. I think there are things that can be done to the website to draw in people between episodes and to provide a little bit more content that links to some of the things that we're doing on the show. And if we can figure out a way to do that and do that on a consistent basis, I would be very pleased with that. I think the Nerd Byword website has the potential to be a nice little hub for some interesting commentary and content that is related to the nerd world. I don't see myself necessarily like putting up like a bunch of news stories or something, but I've done some stuff on my own website, thatnerddave.com as well. It's like just short writing pieces and stuff that link to specific commentary on different things happening in the nerd world, or different content, different comic books, different video games. And if we can get a little bit something going with that, I think I would be very, very pleased with that.
Yeah, I'm also toying around the idea, and I've hinted around at this before, with our TikTok page at Nerd Byword. I haven't really posted anything because I don't know what I want that to look like. I'm not sold on any particular direction. I certainly don't want to, shake my ass on TikTok. I'm not qualified to do that. Do any of these?
I need to click my pen right now because I have to bleep what you want to shake on TikTok, and then we'll just leave that to the imagination of the listeners.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of cool stuff like comic book content and nerd content on TikTok. So I kind of want to make it, a way to kind of draw in listeners. And I've done some stuff on there before on different accounts. But I'm just not sure how I want to manifest that yet. As of right now, I just find funny videos and post them on other social media pages. But that's something that's consistently in the back of my mind as well.
TikTok is a hard nut to crack. I remember when it first became sort of this big thing, and everybody was really into it. My students at the time were trying to figure out from like their journalism perspective how to use it, and I don't think to this point we have ever come up with a satisfying answer for that. There are certain things that people do extremely well on there, but it's not an easy nut to crack on how best to use it. Not as a primary delivery system, but like as a support content system. I think that's a tough nut to crack. So if you can crack that, I'll be excited to hear what you come up with, Kris. All right, I'm very supportive of your next nerdier resolution here, Kris.
Yeah, so based on how much I enjoyed Gotham Knights, one of my previous nerd commendations, I loved it so much that and fell in love with the character of Dick Grayson that, as I mentioned, I bought a year-long Ultra subscription to DC Universe Infinite, and so I want to make the most use of that. I always have, my Marvel Unlimited subscription. That's my home base, but I'm branching out a little bit, and I want to read some more DC stuff. So I read The Long Halloween in one sitting. I read Dark Victory, and really enjoyed those. And so I'm also 25 issues into the Nightwing series, and there's a lot of different stuff, a lot of different directions. So I'm gonna have to sit down and kind of plan out the next year. But I'm a completionist. I'm kind of OCD about getting the entirety of a character's history, and so I've got a lot of different things that I want to accomplish with that service.
And I think one of the things that can be challenging is that the Marvel universe really harkens back to like predominantly like what the 60s. For a lot of the DC characters, you're going back all the way to the 30s in some cases. So although there's a lot of really, really good, worthwhile stuff in the past, may I recommend at the very least, if you want to get like a good sense of where characters tended to be over the last few decades, to kind of start your jumping on point no earlier than Crisis on Infinite Earths.
That's exactly, I think that's the first thing I'm going to read is the event of Crisis.
Because the post-crisis DC universe is in a lot of ways my DC universe. It's the one I grew up reading. And when you go pre-crisis, oftentimes you get really, really good stories, and then you get like really, really goofy stuff too, because like boy oh boy, Batman in the 50s and 60s got out there. But then in the 70s it got really good again for a while. But there's something really much more cohesive and on point there for a long time in the post-crisis world that I think you with your Marvel sliding timeline and everything, I think you would probably gravitate towards that post-crisis world a little more.
Also, based on how much I loved one of your nerd commendations from a good deal back, Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil, I think is one of the best comics that I've read in recent years. Now that he's writing Batman, I think I want to jump on that, but I don't know if I need to go read the Tom King stuff or whatever. I think I want to read Court of Owls, based on how much I enjoy Gotham Knights as well. And there's just something about street level heroes, and I know that we joke about being Batman to death, but I think that's just like where my interest lies for the most part.
I have not touched Zdarsky's Batman yet, but I'm very, very excited to give it a shot. I just love his Daredevil so much; it's ridiculous. There's a number of really, really good Batman runs. I will say that that King's is controversial. I found a lot to like in that run. And there were some missteps that I didn't appreciate either, but I can tell you that there are Batman fans that like hate that entire run like the plague. It's a pretty divisive run in some camps. You'll probably be better off with like the Court of Owls stuff as a jumping on point for Batman comics. That is a good long run too. That is really, really good. Now we got way into the DC thing. We could talk about DC for an hour. I'm okay with that.
Well, I'm also, I just almost like, I usually wait to nerd commend something until I'm all the way done with it. But Midnight Suns is so deep and vast in its content and and the abilities, the things that you can accomplish in that game. So here, I want to nerd commend it again. But now I say all this DC stuff. There's a lot of Marvel stuff that I've never really tapped into. Like, I'm falling in love with the character of Blade. I'm getting a new appreciation for Logan, Magic, Ilyana Rasputin. Like, there's so many like dark and occult and magic stuff I've never really tapped into the Marvel universe. So I've got a lot of reading ahead of me.
It also feels like there are always corners in our respective preferred universes, if you will, that we can't quite connect with until we hit just the right book. Like, the space side of DC, for example, was always really, really easy for me. I kind of got into that via Ron Mars's Green Lantern run back in the day when I was a kid, and that kind of just opened up like DC space for me. Like, it was very easy to get into DC space. And I go over to Marvel, and Marvel space, man, I keep trying. I try. I just wanted to read like a bunch of Guardians of the Galaxy because I like the movies a lot, And I went all the way back to like the Annihilation event, and I'm sitting there trying to read this, and I cannot get into this Nova character, and I really want to, and I'm trying, and I just give up. And as like Marvel space, I struggle to connect with DC space, no problem. And it's just a matter, I think, of just finding that right book with the right creative team on the right character, and suddenly it clicks. And so I have the same problem with like the occult corner of DC. There are, Zatanna, for example. I adore her, but she's not, used nearly enough, I don't think. And then there are, really cool characters in that corner, like Detective Chimp, and I always only get like peripheral stuff from those characters, and I'm like, I really should get more into the occult side of DC. There's so much cool stuff here, but still waiting for the right book to come along and really grab me. So I understand where you're coming from there, man.
And based on here's another one. I got so much based on how much I loved what's going to be next week's nerd commendation. Dun dun dun. I'm gonna be doing like a whole deep dive on like Champions and stuff like that, and Ironheart, and so I've just got so much reading ahead of me, and there's so many great characters that I've met either peripherally or directly in media that I can't wait to dive deep into.
Now, I will say, like the Champions with Miles and Young Cyclops and Miss Marvel. Like I read a good chunk of that run, and it's quite enjoyable. So there's some good stuff there.
All right. Speaking of reading lists, you are going off the beaten path, Dave.
Well, I mean, beaten path. That entirely depends on who you are, right? For me, this is like home base. I just want to spend more time reading European comics again. It's very easy to get bogged down in the American comic book scene. And obviously, the whole Japanese scene looms very, very large, and it's very much like a binary thing almost. Like you like American comics or you like Japanese comics, and that's sort of like the two things that people act are there. You like superhero or you like indie. Well, I like it all, but the big thing that I've noticed is when I think back to like my childhood, the things that grabbed me before I got into superhero comics in particular. I was a big fan of like Scrooge McDuck comic books because that makes sense as a kid. But then there was also Lucky Luke, and there was Asterix and Obelix and those distinctive sort of Franco-Belgian comic books, that they left a big imprint on me. And I feel like, leaving Europe meant that I disconnected from like a whole comic book tradition, and one that most American comic book fans don't spend a lot of time paying attention to. And there's a big, strong, healthy, comic book industry, graphic novel industry in parts of Europe, and they're putting out stuff, constantly. And there's some really interesting stuff, and very different tonally, very different subject matter wise than some of the stuff that we sometimes see tackled in American comic books. And so I feel like it's just time for me to get back to my roots a little bit and to reconnect to that particular comic book tradition, and to just see what I've been missing out on since I left, Europe 20 plus years ago, and just kind of like drifted away from all of those books. I've spent some time starting to reread some of the original volumes of Asterix, and it's just incredible to me how funny they are and how well they hold up. But I really want to get into the newer stuff too. Like, what have I missed over the last 20 years? There's got to be a ton of quality stuff, and stuff that's not really talked enough about on this side of the ocean, So one of my goals is going to be to just read more European comic books again. And so my nerd commendations might get even weirder there for a while, because I just want to dive headfirst into like a segment of this industry that just completely flies under the radar for most readers. So let's just read more European comics, man. Like, that's what I'm all about right now.
Are these readily and easily accessible?
Some. I'm doing research right now to kind of make a list of some of the stuff that I want to dive into. Some of the stuff you can get, from Amazon via Kindle. Some of the stuff pops up on Comixology. There's also I don't want to say publisher, but like a printing house, I guess. It's called Europe Comics. They're kind of in the business of translating those things and printing them, and you can order directly through their website. So there are ways to get a hold of some of these things. None of them necessarily easy or streamlined. I mean, there's not a one-stop shop where you go online. It's like, download your European digital comics. We're not going to have DC Universe Infinite Europe Edition or something. But I think they are available, and there have been many translated. I also have the benefit of, even if the originals are like in French, for example, if they have been translated into German, then I can just go ahead and bypass looking for an English translation if there isn't one, and just, grab a German translation, because, that I guess that's just the benefit of being bilingual. But, readily available is kind of, I recommended one a few months back called Elles, ELLE, and then in parentheses S. That was a European comic. And that one I found through the Kindle store. I got it from Amazon. So some of them are more easily available than others. My guess is that the ones that I can get a hold of digitally, I will get digitally. But I'm making a list right now, and there's some really interesting stuff out there, man.
This reminds me, I think, do you remember this a couple years ago when it was like a revelation that there was a Mexican like comic book company that did not get the news that Gwen Stacy had been killed off, and so like they continued on, and I was looking everywhere, eBay, anywhere. Like, I was looking at like Mexican like online stores trying to find copies of these books because I was dying to see it.
Yeah, it's just that kind of stuff. Sometimes, get going globalist for a second, but there are things that are beyond the borders of our own country that are high quality entertainment. That's why I love watching foreign films as well too. I'm a big fan of the old subtitles. So I'm just excited to dive back into something that I have not, been able to reconnect with really since my teenage years. I'm just so excited, like I can hardly get the words out. I'm just so excited to get back into European comic books and just really get a sense for them again. All right, Kris, what is your third and final nerd year resolution?
Listen, I made you a promise a couple months ago that I would finally finish the Heir to the Empire trilogy. And I'm almost done with the second book, but my brain is just so scattered and ADHD with all the different things that I'm reading, games that I'm playing, shows that I'm watching, films I'm watching, that I'm still, I'm doing most of this via audiobook, if not completely via audiobook. Number one, the narrator is not great. And also everybody now, since your very first nerd commendation, I measure them against the Witcher audiobooks, which everything else sucks in comparison to them.
This is true.
So I'm like 20 chapters into Dark Force Rising, so I'm almost there, and I really want to finish this because this was a promise I made. It was an episode that we had agreed upon that you would read Hoxpox, which, if we're making comparisons, 12 issues of comics versus 3 full novels, not exactly the same workload.
Although, in fairness, that was some dense stuff, dude, and I had zero interest in reading it. I was
Same. Same.
you had to persuade me for this one, my friend. And yeah, I will freely admit that you had the much bigger workload, but I feel like I had to do some heavy lifting considering that I was not all that well versed in the X-Men universe.
Yeah. It's also been a strange reading experience just to reorient myself because these books were written even before the prequels. So,
Yep.
I think
In fact, Coruscant as the name of the Imperial Center was established by these books.
Oh,
and then
let me tell you this.
Lucas kept that. Oh, I know the narrator doesn't know how to pronounce Coruscant.
Oh, he says Coruscant, and I immediately stop and quit. So that's probably that right there is probably what's made me take months and months and months just to get through these first two books.
Just do me a favor and don't hold the narrator against the novels, please.
I may just go through my handy dandy Libby app and borrow a Kindle version from the local library because there's only so many Coruscants I can take.
Coruscants.
Also, I will say, as it stands right now, Dark Force Rising is a massive upgrade over the first novel. I think so much of Heir to the Empire, and not to put the cart before the horse of this episode that hopefully we eventually get to if I ever finish this, a lot of Heir to the Empire was setting up the scenery, reestablishing that universe, and a lot of the same old tropes that were just kind of played out from the original trilogy. But if you take into context at that time, that was just about 10 years after the original trilogy wrapped up. So it's just weird because I have to reorient myself, and so it's a bit jarring. And then you have this buffoon talking about Coruscant and Dark Jedi. Just keep saying Dark Jedi. And you and I texted about this. I was just like, wait, did they like create the word Sith later on? Because he keeps saying Dark Jedi, and that doesn't make sense. Why not just call them Sith?
Well, and my thing was Sith was a term that had actually popped up in like one of the rough drafts of George Lucas's script for the first Star Wars movie, Episode 4, A New Hope, whatever, and then it popped up in the novelization of that as well. But I have absolutely no source for this or corroboration or any reason to believe this, but it just feels right, I guess. It has truthiness, as Stephen Colbert would have said back in the day. It just feels right, whether it's true or not. If you're saying Sith out loud, it's fine, but if you're writing it on the page, you just kind of glance at the word, it looks a whole lot like shit, and I don't know if I'd want to say over and over again in my Star Wars movie. And I'm so going to have so many bleeps for doing that just now.
Okay, please help me with this. How do you say, is it Sabaoth? Is it Sabaoth? How do you say this goofus, isn't it?
Would you believe that I still do not know after all these years for sure?
And this guy, I'm not going to take this guy's word for, anything because he's saying Coruscant.
You really can't. Coruscant. I'm never going to get over that. But it's just, there's just no blueprint at the time. I mean, if you think about it, this was really the first new Star Wars in a decade, and it's just it's a whole different world. And our context for this is going to be completely different too. I have a mad love for this because I read it when I was 10 years old, and holy crap, there's new Star Wars stories, and this was everything. Oh my God, this is Luke Skywalker. He's a fully trained Jedi. He's out there having more adventures,
until the geckos roll around.
Yeah, and then in your context, it's like there is a plethora of Star Wars content. It's everywhere. You cannot escape it. The storytelling has changed a lot in the last 20 years. So I said 20 years. It's 30 years. anyways, so storytelling has changed a lot in that universe as well. So our even our context is just going to be very, very different for these. Where this is like a childhood love that I keep coming back to. This is like this weird alternate universe for you. So I don't anticipate that you're going to love the Ayer trilogy nearly as much as I do, and that is in large part because of just the context of how we encountered them.
I will say this. Reading these books has really reinforced my sheer adoration for Star Wars Rebels. And if there's no nerd commendation that you take from me, it's to watch Star Wars Rebels, because it takes the best elements of this series, aka Thrawn, and it's just so masterfully well done. And kind of seeing him in the context of the rebellion, rather than just a replacement to the Emperor and the old regime. Seeing him in that context is fascinating. So all the more reason for me to just simply adore Star Wars Rebels, and hopefully what we get to see in the Ahsoka series, because there are strong rumors that we're getting Thrawn and the Rebels band back together.
I'm just gonna say it, that the second best thing to come out of these books, and Disney refuses to pick it back up, is Mara Jade.
Oh, shut up! God, I love her. She can do no wrong. I love her. You knew what you did when you recommended this. You knew what you did. Oh God, I love her.
She's perfect in every way. She just is.
I support women's rights and women's wrongs. All right, Dave, your final nerd year resolution.
I just want to write more. I feel like I used to write a lot more, and got sidetracked with life and things, and if nothing else, doing this podcast has kind of reignited my love of not just reading comics and talking about comics, but also writing comics. And so it's just exciting to be out there, writing again. I have a short story placed in an anthology that's supposed to release next year. There'll probably be a Kickstarter announcement here pretty soon. I have another short story that's complete art and colors, everything done, that we're shopping around right now. Just had a couple of pitches accepted to a couple of other anthologies. Just kind of like building myself back up, getting that narrative edge sharp again. I love writing short fiction anyway, so writing stories that are like 8 to 12 pages or something feels really good right now. And eventually I kind of build myself up to maybe like a one shot or something, and just like really just putting my comic book writing out there again. There is something so special about writing comics. Just the collaborative nature of it, working with the right artist, and then seeing what a colorist brings to the table, and then seeing what a letterer brings to the table, those collaborative feelings, they're just like nothing else. And I write, prose as well, and I write nonfiction, but there's something really special about writing comics. And so my goal for this next year is just to keep going and keep pushing, and get more short stories out there, and maybe start working up towards that one shot, and try to put some of these ideas that have been on my back burner for a long time now out there into the world, and hopefully people will like them. But I just want to be back in that creative process. I want to meet interesting artists, collaborate with them, bounce ideas off of them, and in a lot of ways, you learn so much about the medium of comic books just by working in the medium of comic books. I don't think I've ever learned more than just talking with an artist. There's nothing better than going through the beats of a story, and an artist basically saying, dude, there's no good way to do what you're proposing here, but if you do this, and I'm like, holy crap, why did I not see that? That is genius, that kind of back and forth. I don't think there's anything quite like it in other creative endeavors. It's just in comic books, it's just something so special. So my big final nerd year resolution is to just write more comics.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think I talked about this as well in our 100th episode, but like doing this show kind of brought me back into writing for the first time it almost like awoken those latent cells that I haven't done since college. And so when I was just writing lovesick poetry and stuff like that on the side, and I was writing songs and everything. And so, I mean, for Pete's sake, in the last year, I've created my own original character, which a dear friend of mine, Al Dondo, has brought to life. You can see that as my profile picture on Twitter and in our Discord. So it's just really, really cool to just get those juices flowing, and something that I hadn't considered in over a decade. So I'm really excited by the possibility of opening up like written features on our website, whether it is comic reviews or what have you. Just being back in that realm of creativity has just been such a joy. And even picking brains of, you know, both professional and indie creators over the course of this show has been really cool to kind of, you know, I'm such a nerd. I love origin stories. I love etymology. I love, you know, the beginning of everything. That's what I love about language as well, is like, I like the starting points. And so being able to kind of chart these folks' stories as well, in addition to our own, has been really fascinating.
Have you watched Wednesday yet on Netflix?
Not yet. I had started the first few minutes, but I've seen a couple of highlights, and I like what I see, and I'm excited to dive into it.
So I've watched like the first 3 or 4 episodes now. Oh my god, I'm watching TV. It's incredible. I don't even know how that happened. Every once in a while, I find a little time. And I don't think the character has ever been more relatable than when you realize that she like is working through all of her emotional issues by writing like a fictionalized version of herself, and she just constantly sitting down at this little old typewriter and it's just like hammering that on that typewriter. I was like, I'm just gonna have to grow some pigtails because I find her totally relatable now. Like this is. I know exactly what you feel like. You're just working through your issues, like putting out stories into the world and just hammering on that typewriter. I love a good typewriter, man. That's how I learned how to type.
Oh,
I need to get one.
Yeah.
I would write all my stories on vintage typewriters if I could.
There's something so soothing about that. Based on the success of that show, I hope that the rumors that we reported on a couple of weeks or months ago that she's going to be White Tiger in the MCU, I hope those are coming out to be true.
Oh, Jenna Ortega deserves all the success. Like even parts of the show where I thought, that bit of writing was a little weak, or that little bit of snark wasn't all that well written. Her delivery saves every one of the weaker moments and elevates every one of the powerful ones. It's a tour de force acting wise, absolutely. God, it's just I'm blown away. I'm in awe of that performance. It's so good.
She's going to be in the new Scream movie as well, yeah.
Yeah, I think she was in the last one as well. Although I will say, this is really a standout role for her. Like I remember the last Scream movie, but she did not grab my attention there like she did here. This is a star making turn. I mean, it's no wonder that everybody's talking about her after this. It's a tour de force. Alrighty, folks, there you have it. Those are our Nerd Year resolutions. What are yours? Find us on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram at NerdByword, and individually at ThatNerdDave and at ThatNerdChris. We want to know what you are looking forward to nerd-wise in the new year. And please stick around, because after a short break, we're going to hit you with 2 more nerd commendations. Welcome back, folks. It's time to recommend some new nerdy media, things that we have encountered that we love and we think you would love too. You know it as... Kris, Miles Morales again. What's going on?
Yeah, we got a brand new #1 with a new writer and artist. Miles Morales Spider-Man #1 dropped a few weeks ago as of the time of this recording. Written by Nerd Byword favorite author Cody Ziglar, who wrote Dave's Doc Ock Aunt May team-up issue of the Beyond series.
Sold.
Illustrated.
Nerd commendation over. Yep. Sold. I'm buying this. We're in.
Yeah, and illustrated beautifully by Federico Vicentini. And so we're kind of... as much as I love the Saladin Ahmed run, it was a much needed kind of, not a reboot, but like a repurposing. And it captured all the great family moments, introduces a new adversary for Miles, and really grounds the character. And what I just continue to love about this character, and it's the same thing that I loved about the Jaime Reyes Blue Beetle run, is that the family's in on this quote unquote secret identity. And I just think that that's so much more of a rich storytelling well to dip into when your family's there with you along for the ride, and you're supported and you're loved, and you're not this mopey loner. I love you, Pete, but like, good God, tell them. Like, so I just really, really enjoyed this. There was one moment in particular, a family moment, where he's on the phone with his parents. It got real dusty in my room when I was reading this. And it just captures all the elements that I love so much about Miles. And I think Ziglar and Vicentini knock it out of the park, and I can't wait for the second issue.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the character, particularly obviously from the whole Into the Spider-Verse movie. I adore that thing.
Also,
and
new
I
trailer
never,
drop for that. New trailer drop for that.
yeah,
Oh my God. Yeah.
looking good. But I always kind of have like bounced around with his comics a little bit. Like I'll read a few issues and then I just kind of like lose track of it, and I'm not quite sure why that keeps happening to me, because I really do adore the character. So maybe this new number one is a place for me to kind of find my jumping on point again, and then kind of work my way backwards and kind of go through all the stuff that I've missed in his development, because I'm a big fan. I think one of the issues that I still have is what they ultimately did with the Ultimate Universe, and that connection to, like, Peter Parker Spider-Man is dead and I have sort of picked up the mantle, and what that means, and the whole legacy aspect of the character, that's kind of been wiped away a little bit. And a lot of those the developments from those early issues, I think like his mother died and then she came back to life or something. A lot of development from those early issues was wiped away too. That kind of stuff always leaves me a little reeling. I hate it particularly when DC Comics does that, and they love their crisis and rebooting everything. They do it like every few years, it feels like. But that kind of thing always bugs me. And so there's like that wall there where if I'm trying to read like his early issues, I'm like, yeah, but none of this is going to matter in a few issues, which is stupid because it's just a story, like if it's good, it matters. But it just feels like the character kind of gets reset when they kind of do the whole like Ultimate Universe thing is gone. And I really like the legacy aspect of the character and that being wiped away. I'm just going to have to get over myself and get back on the horse with this character because I am a fan.
Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest bungles of the character. I think you could already tell, I've said this before on the show, Bendis was obviously checking out. Spider-Man 2 was such a disappointment. And his writing on the Miles book is almost like he was mailing it in. And so I recommend the Ahmed run. There are a couple of dips in there, but it's good for the most part. And then this one is a great, easy starting point as well. It's very new reader friendly.
Well, I'm there for it.
All right, Dave, I'm excited to hear about yours because I played a version of this way back when on the Xbox 360.
Civilization Revolution, I'm assuming. Oh my god, man. I'm gonna tell you now something. This is not even a joke. I was at ground zero for the series. I remember playing the very first Civilization game in the 90s on a PC in a youth cafe where you got to pay a few German marks. That's not even a thing anymore. Now they have the euro. You got to pay a few German marks for an hour of computer time, and I was just playing Civilization nonstop. I'm a big fan of the Civilization series. It's been with me on and off for most of my life, it feels like. And my favorite by far was Civilization 3. It's the one I probably played the most. It was around my college years when I was just, I needed to relax my brain for some reason. Turn-based strategy, civilization building games were like the place where I went to relax. Don't know why that is. Maybe it's my love of history. However, I've kind of like disconnected from the series for a little while, so I didn't really play 4 or 5 very much. And in the meantime, we've hit already Civilization 6 as of like 2016. So this game has been around for a while. But what I really want to speak about here is the fact that this thing has gotten an iPad port. And that got me interested because having a civilization game, a full-fledged PC civilization game sort of on the go on your iPad, that's like a nice idea. I never really have the time to sit at my computer for hours and just like play a strategy game like this. But I can sneak out my iPad a little while after everybody's gone to bed and play some on my iPad. That's much easier. So I installed this, and holy crap, dude, it's amazing. Obviously, the series has come a long way since I spent all those hours playing Civilization 3. They've kind of gone like to like hexagon tiles now instead of like these square tiles. That's a really interesting adjustment. A whole bunch of new mechanics, where you building like districts now around your city. That's really interesting. How do you support your various cities with very specific districts? There's all sorts of new stuff to learn here for somebody who is sort of an old veteran of the series but lapsed out of it for a while. But, I have to say, Asper, which did the port to iPad, did a really, really good job. It handles really well. Everything makes sense. Touchscreen is responsive. Load times are fairly low unless you're playing on like a ginormous sized Earth. Then the loading times can get a little long. But I mean, I opened this thing up on my iPad, and within, I would say, 15 seconds, I'm playing, and that's pretty darn good for what is basically a full-fledged PC game ported to an iPad. I'm not running an iPad Pro or anything, so. And I have enough power under the hood to perfectly run this without problems. I'm very, very impressed with this, and it's a great alternate way to experience just a really fantastic turn-based strategy game. What's interesting here, too, is that you can download the game for free and play 60 turns for free. Which is, that's a hefty amount of time that you can, test drive the game. The base game then cost $9.99 currently on iPad, which is, as far as I'm concerned, a steal. And then there are various DLC packs that you can purchase as in-app purchases. And see, I know I always rail against like in-app purchases and all that stuff, but this isn't, pay to win or anything like that. An expansion packs have been a very, very long tradition in the Civilization series. You get the base game, and then every year or so they put a big expansion pack out where they add, additional game features, additional civilizations you can play as, new scenarios. I love a good scenario. Here's like Gathering Storm, where it adds like natural disasters into the game, and then you have to like figure out how you're going to steer your civilization through various natural disasters. That's a very, very cool part of the game. So I'm looking at various DLC passes right now to see what I'm going to get. Right now, I'm still learning, the new features of the base game, but I'm very, very pleased with this overall, and it runs on my iPad like a charm. So, highly recommended if you're into turn-based strategy. There is no game like Civilization. I mean, there's plenty of imitators, but there is no game that hits the spot quite like Civilization itself, and it's available on iPad, which is just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, this is a blast from the past. Between this and Age of Empires, those were my go-tos back in the day. I love that stuff. Now, I just looked up on my Mac. Unfortunately, my version is $59.99, but that's okay. So it's been a hot second since I've played a Civilization game, but maybe it's time to tap back in.
Yeah, I have to say, man, it's amazing and fun, and they've not like it's I don't even know how to say this. They did not rest on their laurels, like the gameplay has changed significantly. The design of the game has changed significantly from previous versions. It took me a good second to orient myself in what the game was like now. And I think that's really cool, like that they're constantly trying to make a better Civilization game. Now, this thing has been ported to pretty much anything you can imagine. You might want to also check your Xbox One, because apparently there is an Xbox port of Civilization 6 as well. It's pretty much everywhere at this point. So maybe that one is more in the ballpark affordability-wise. They're also, as of this recording, they got a countdown sale going on Xbox, so you might be able to pick it up for cheap. Alrighty, folks, there you have it. If you like what you just heard, then you know what to do. Get on your favorite podcasting platform, give us a rating, give us a review, and subscribe so you never miss another episode. You can find us wherever podcasts can be found: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, and of course our very own website, nerdbyword.com.
And hit us up on social media, Twitter and Instagram, at Nerd by Word, or individually, that Nerd Dave and that Nerd Kris. Also, hit the link tree in our bio to slide into the Discord server and chat with us. Share your nerd commendations, things you'd like to see in future episodes. Also, get you some cool merch. You know you need a coffee mug with our logo on it. And as always, stay well and stay nerdy.
The Nerd Byword is written and produced by Kris and Dave, two nerds with a love of all things pop culture. The podcast features music by Al Jimenez, with additional drops composed by Joe Biondi. Our show art is by Ashery Design. Find us at nerdbyword.com and wherever podcasts are available.